The caregiver sang softly to the old man, unaware his millionaire son was watching and changed her life. "Room 208, Mr. Raymond. Do not expect a response," the nurse said without looking up. "Hasn't spoken in months. His vitals are stable, but he's just not there anymore." Judy nodded quietly and tightened her cardigan around her shoulders. The hospital hallway smelled of disinfectant and rain, sharp, cold, and faintly metallic. Thunder rumbled outside as she pushed open the door to the dimly lit room. Inside, the air felt heavier. Mr. Raymond lay motionless in the bed near the window, his face turned slightly to the side. He was an older man, late 70s, maybe early 80s, with thick silver hair and deep lines that etched down from his temples to his chin. His eyes were open, dull, staring at nothing. Not the ceiling, not her, not the rain streaking down the window. Just emptiness. Judy stood still for a moment. She was 24, blonde, and barely over 5 feet tall. Her life was a far cry from sterile hospital rooms and silent patients. Less than 2 years ago, she had been singing in smoky lounges and jazz bars, her voice carrying over clinking glasses and murmured conversations. Now she worked night shifts as a caregiver, her music packed away like a childhood toy she no longer had time to play with. She stepped to the side of the bed and reached out gently, resting her hand over Mr. Raymond's. His skin was cold. "You probably can't hear me," she whispered, her voice trembling, "but I used to sing once. My dad said it helped people feel less lonely." She paused, her eyes scanning his unmoving face. The monitors beeped steadily behind her, unbothered. Without thinking, she sat down on a chair beside the bed, leaned slightly forward, and after a deep breath, began to sing. "Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking." Her voice was soft, wobbly, but warm. The words floated gently into the stillness, filling the corners of the room. She kept singing, her voice growing steadier with every note, even as tears stung the corners of her eyes. Outside the room, someone paused. Logan Raymond, mid-30s, stood frozen just beyond the doorway. He had returned to the hospital after hours, under the radar as always. The staff knew who he was, wealthy, powerful, untouchable, the son of the great Henry Raymond. But they also knew not to expect warmth from him. Logan kept his distance. He paid the bills, signed the authorizations, and avoided the rest. He had not intended to come this late. He only stopped by to drop off paperwork, maybe peek in for a moment as he sometimes did, never long, never inside. But this night something stopped him in his tracks. A voice, not loud, not showy, but achingly beautiful in its rawness. He edged closer just enough to peer through the narrow slit between door and frame. His eyes found her, a girl with hair the color of summer wheat, singing to his unconscious father like he mattered, like he was still here, still someone worth singing to. Logan swallowed hard. His father had been a musician once, a violinist of quiet fame and uncompromising discipline. Their home had always been filled with sound, but not always warmth. After his mother died, Logan and his father had drifted into separate orbits, mutual silence becoming their unspoken agreement. Now this girl, a stranger, was doing what Logan never dared, reaching him. Judy continued the song, unaware of the man watching her from the hall. "You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile." She let the last note linger, eyes closed, then slowly exhaled. Silence returned, deeper somehow, after the song ended. She looked down at Mr. Raymond's face. Nothing. Still empty, still silent. She gently squeezed his hand, offered him a small smile of her own, and stood. Outside, Logan stepped back, blending into the shadows, just as the door opened. Judy didn't see him as she turned down the corridor, her shoes whispering over the tile floor. He stood there for another minute before finally entering the room. His father hadn't moved, not a blink, not a breath out of place, and yet the air felt different, warmer, lighter. Logan sat in the same chair Judy had just left, and stared at the man he'd spent most of his life misunderstanding. "I don't know who she is," he murmured, "but she saw something in you I stopped trying to see a long time ago." The rain tapped softly on the windows, as if keeping rhythm with a song that hadn't truly ended, and for the first time in years, Logan stayed. Before hospital rooms and late-night shifts, Judy had lived for music. At 21, her voice had become a familiar sound in the jazz lounges tucked into forgotten corners of the city. She sang with a warmth that lingered in the air long after the final note, a voice that could hush a room without effort. Her regular spot was a dimly lit club called Velvet Moon, where regulars would arrive early just to sit closer to the stage. She never sought fame. Judy only wanted to sing songs that meant something, and for a while, that was enough. Then came Darren. He was charming, older, and knew the business, or so he said. He became her manager, her boyfriend, her everything. He promised her bookings, demo recordings, a future. She believed him, until the night he disappeared. She came home to an empty apartment. No suitcase, no note, just her bank account wiped clean and her guitar missing. Everything she had saved, gone. Her world collapsed in silence. No more music, no more stage, just questions and rent overdue. She vanished from the scene like a melody left unresolved. Caregiving was never the plan. It started as a desperate attempt to survive. A neighbor worked at a staffing agency and found her a temp job in a hospice wing. 1 week turned into 2, then months. She didn't talk about her past, and no one asked. In her scrubs and ponytail, she was just another quiet girl doing the hard work no one else wanted. She never sang. Until Mr. Raymond. Something about the way he lay there, silent and alone, reminded her of her father. He had passed away in a hospital room just like this one. Fluorescent lights, antiseptic smells, and the steady beep of a heart monitor. She had not made it in time to say goodbye. That memory never left her. So when she saw Mr. Raymond for the first time, something stirred inside her. He looked so distant, so far from here, like someone drifting out to sea. And without thinking, she sang, "Smile, though your heart is aching." It was not a performance. It was not rehearsed. Her voice was soft, uncertain, but each note pulled something deeper from her soul. Not for applause, not for approval, just for him. She sang as if reaching across a dark, silent void, hoping that, wherever he was, he might hear her. When the song ended, she didn't expect a reaction, and she got none. But for the first time in years, she felt like her voice mattered again. She returned to her rounds, quieter than before, but with a strange lightness in her chest. She couldn't explain it, just that somehow she had sung not to be heard, but to be present, to offer something beautiful into a space that had forgotten beauty. And that was enough. What Judy did not know was that someone else had heard it, someone who had not only listened, but would never forget. Logan Raymond was 33, and on paper, he had everything. He had everything: CEO of a rapidly growing tech firm, a penthouse overlooking the skyline, tailored suits, and a calendar booked months in advance. He was the kind of man who spoke in bullet points, closed deals with a handshake, and never cried, not even at his mother's funeral. He had built walls so high, even he forgot what he was trying to keep out. Growing up, Logan's world had been filled with music, but not warmth. His father, Henry Raymond, was a celebrated violinist who toured across continents. While other kids went to soccer practice with their dads, Logan sat alone at home with sheet music and unanswered questions. His mother had tried to bridge the gap. She sang to him, taught him to hum lullabies his father once composed, and whispered, "He loves you, just doesn't know how to show it." But when she died suddenly from a stroke, Logan was only 12, and whatever thread connected father and son snapped clean. Henry returned from a European tour 2 days late for the funeral. Logan never forgave him. As the years passed, they spoke less and less, until silence became the only thing they shared. When Henry collapsed from a stroke nearly a year ago, Logan handled everything: the private hospital, the paperwork, the high-end care facility. But he never stepped inside the room, not once. He told himself it was because there was nothing left to say. But then, that night, as he passed by room 208, he heard her. That voice. He did not know the girl, just caught a glimpse of blonde hair and soft features through the cracked door. But her voice, it sliced through him. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was familiar. She was singing "Smile," his mother's favorite song. The one she used to hum when Logan couldn't sleep. The one Henry used to play on the violin. Just once, years ago, the night before his final tour. Logan had not heard that song in over 2 decades. But now, hearing it in the dark, sung with such quiet care to a man who had not spoken in months, something broke loose in him. He stayed in the hallway long after the song ended, staring at the door he had avoided for nearly a year. That night, he could not sleep. The next evening he returned, still did not go in, but he stood there again, hands in his coat pockets, listening as the girl, Judy, he would later learn, sang softly, unaware of her audience. And for the first time in 10 years, Logan allowed himself to feel grief, guilt, and the smallest spark of something he had buried long ago, the hope that maybe not everything between him and his father was lost. The following night, he brought a chair from down the hall and sat outside the door. He did not say a word. He just listened, to the voice, to the silence, to his own heartbeat. And when Judy sang "Smile" again, Logan closed his eyes. He could almost hear the violin, almost hear his mother's laugh, almost feel something thawing inside the frozen space he once called a heart. And for the first time in his adult life, Logan stayed. For the next week, Logan came to the care facility every evening just before 9. He never went inside room 208. Instead, he stood a few feet from the door, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, eyes closed, listening. On his first night, Logan came. Each night, Judy sang something different. Soft jazz standards, old ballads, sometimes just humming a lullaby he could not name but somehow remembered. Her voice was never loud, never polished like a performance. It was raw, warm, and quietly aching. It reminded him of rain tapping on windows, of fireplace crackles, of home, not the mansion he grew up in, but the home he wished had existed. She never saw him, or so he thought. One evening, Logan arrived later than usual. He stepped into the hallway just as Judy was placing a blanket over Mr. Raymond and whispering goodnight. When she turned around, she stopped abruptly. They both froze. He was mid-step, caught in the act. She blinked, startled. I'm sorry," Judy said quickly, her voice flustered. "I didn't mean to. Was I singing too loud?" Logan shook his head. "No, you weren't." She tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, visibly nervous. "It's past visiting hours. I usually don't sing this late." He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke softly. "Don't stop." She tilted her head, confused. "Don't stop singing," he said. "Your voice, it brings him back." Judy's eyes softened, her nerves easing just a bit. "I'm not sure he hears me." "He does," Logan replied. "I think maybe he does more than either of us realize." There was a pause. "I've seen you here," she added cautiously, "most nights, just outside the door." Logan gave a half smile. "Yeah, that's me, the guy who lurks and never says anything." She laughed under her breath. "I'm Logan, by the way." "I know," she said, and immediately looked apologetic. "I mean, they talk, the nurses." "Of course they do," he said, amused. "And you are?" "Judy?" He nodded. "Nice to officially meet you." They stood there in the hallway for a moment longer than either expected. The hum of machines down the corridor filled the silence. "You used to sing professionally, didn't you?" Logan asked suddenly. Judy blinked, surprised. "How'd you guess?" "Your voice," he said simply. She hesitated. I did. A few years ago, bars, clubs, small stages. Why'd you stop? She looked down. Life, betrayal, bills, the usual. He didn't press her. Instead, he glanced toward his father's door. He used to play the violin, Logan said, professionally, traveled a lot. I didn't understand it when I was a kid. I thought he cared more about music than me. Judy said nothing, letting him speak. After my mom died, he continued, we never talked much. I built a life without him. Easier that way. She nodded slowly. But you're here now? I wasn't, not until you sang. Judy's breath caught. There was something disarming about his honesty, soft, without shame or performance. I want to try something, Logan said. Something crazy. Judy raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I want you to teach me. A song, something old. One of the ones you sing to him. I want to sing for my dad. Just once. She stared at him, taken aback. You want me to teach you? To sing? Why not? He asked with a grin. You already woke something up in him. Maybe if he hears it from me, maybe he'll remember. Judy looked at him for a long beat, then slowly smiled. All right, but I'm warning you, I'm tough. I think I can handle that. They stood there, smiling like two people who had unknowingly circled each other for far too long, finally meeting in the middle. That night they sat in the small staff lounge, Judy humming the first few bars of Smile again, breaking down the lyrics. Logan followed awkwardly, off-key at first, then better. With each note, something unspoken began to mend, and for the first time in years, Logan Raymond didn't feel like he was just visiting his father. He felt like he was coming back to him. One note at a time. Judy had not expected the singing lessons to become a ritual, yet every Tuesday and Thursday evening, after her shift ended, Logan would show up, sometimes a little early, always a little nervous, and they would meet in the common room of the care facility, where the walls were lined with dusty books and the piano in the corner hadn't been tuned in years. They sat side by side on the worn couch, her humming a few bars, him repeating them, often off-key, sometimes hopelessly out of rhythm. But he tried, God, he tried, and Judy, to her own surprise, loved every minute of it. Their first song was Smile, then came Moon River, What a Wonderful World, and Unforgettable. Logan fumbled the lyrics, mumbled through verses, and sometimes laughed so hard he had to start over. But his voice grew stronger with each attempt, never perfect, but honest and deeply human. Judy coached him with warmth, occasionally tapping his arm to adjust his breathing, tilting his chin with 2 fingers so he would stop slouching. You sing from your chest, not your throat, she would say, demonstrating with ease. You make it look way too easy, he'd reply, watching her with something like awe. Somewhere between the harmony and the laughter, something deeper began to form, something soft, something quiet, like a song neither of them had sung yet, but both instinctively knew. Logan started bringing dinner with him, homemade. Chicken soup one night, lasagna the next, and once an attempt at her favorite, butternut squash risotto. How did you know I loved this? She asked, eyes wide. You mentioned it once. At the vending machine 3 weeks ago, she blinked. You remember that? I remember everything you say, he replied without hesitation. Judy felt something shift in her chest, something warm and dangerous. Between sessions, Logan started helping her with small tasks, taking out heavy laundry bags, changing water coolers, even scrubbing a stubborn spot on the floor outside her assigned wing. Each gesture was quiet, practical, and deeply thoughtful. She teased him. You know you're the heir to an empire, right? You don't have to mop floors. He shrugged. Maybe I want to earn my way into something better. One evening, after a particularly long rehearsal, Logan showed up carrying a large, oddly shaped box. What's that? She asked, raising an eyebrow. He set it down gently and peeled back the lid. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a restored vintage microphone, silver, gleaming, with a wide grill and curved stand. Judy gasped. "I saw you stop in front of one like this once," he said. "Back when we passed that antique store downtown. You touched the glass. Didn't say a word." She ran her fingers over it reverently. "I only mentioned it once." He smiled. "That was enough." Judy swallowed hard, her throat tightening. "Logan, I can't accept this." "You already have," he said gently. "Besides, I didn't get it just for you." She looked up, confused. "I got it for us," he added. "To sing. Together." The next afternoon, Judy arranged for a small performance in the care facility's common room. Just a casual concert for the residents, an idea she'd always wanted to try but never had the courage. Logan insisted on being part of it. They stood together in front of a half-circle of wheelchairs and walkers, the new microphone perched between them. Judy wore a simple navy dress, hair loose for once. Logan had a guitar slung over one shoulder and a lyric sheet folded in his back pocket. They opened with "You Are My Sunshine," the crowd clapping along softly, smiles blooming like spring after a long winter. Judy's voice soared, but it was Logan's steady harmony, raw, imperfect, but heartfelt, that stole the moment. They sang "Can't Help Falling in Love," and then, by request, returned to smile. When the final note faded, the applause was gentle but full of emotion. Some of the older patients wiped tears from their eyes. One woman leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "That boy's in love with her." Judy turned to Logan, cheeks flushed. He looked at her with something he had never shown anyone, not even his father. "You know," he said, his voice quiet enough for only her to hear, "your voice didn't just reach my father." She met his gaze, breath catching. "It reached me too," he continued. "It's healing something I didn't know was broken." She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She simply reached for his hand, and in that quiet, sacred moment, beneath the soft glow of fluorescent lights, in a room full of forgotten people and old songs, something new began. Not a performance, not a romance written in grand gestures, but a connection so real, so earned, it sang louder than any applause ever could. The news came suddenly, like a knock at the door you never wanted to answer. Logan had been offered a long-term executive role overseas, Switzerland of all places, heading an ambitious merger that would require at least 3 years of his life, possibly more. It was the kind of opportunity people built careers for, the kind of offer no one in his world would ever refuse. But Judy was not part of that world. When he told her, she smiled softly, trying to seem proud. "That's incredible, Logan. You deserve it." He studied her face for something, disappointment, sadness, even anger, but she gave him none, only grace. "I haven't said yes yet," he offered. She looked down, folding a napkin in her hands at the small coffee shop where they always met after her shift. "You should," she said. "It's your dream." He hesitated. "And what about us?" Judy gave a soft, bittersweet smile. "We were always borrowed time, weren't we?" He wanted to argue, wanted to say no, they were more than a brief moment, but her voice was so calm, so certain, it silenced him. The next day, Logan packed. He left most of his belongings in storage, took only the essentials, and set one final appointment for himself, one last visit to the care facility before his flight. It was late evening when he arrived. The halls were quiet, dimly lit, nurses moving softly between rooms. He didn't ask for Judy. He didn't want her to see him like this, torn, aching, unsure of everything but the sound of her voice echoing in his mind. He stepped into room 208. His father lay just as always, still, unmoving, eyes closed. The monitors beeped steadily beside him, their rhythm the only sound in the room. Logan pulled a chair closer and sat down. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded lyric sheet, the one Judy had scribbled notes on during their lessons. The one she'd once said, "You'll get it perfect one day. Not with your pitch, but with your heart." He took a deep breath and began. "Smile, though your heart is aching." His voice cracked on the second line, but he kept going. "Smile, even though it's breaking. The room felt different now, heavy, full of memories too old to name. He sang slowly, carefully, putting everything he had into the words, not because he expected a response, but because it felt like the only thing he could give. As he reached the final note, his throat tightened. "You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile." He bowed his head, eyes stinging, lips trembling. "I don't know if you can hear me," he whispered, "but I hope this meant something. I'm sorry it took me so long." His father didn't move. No twitch, no flicker. Logan sat a moment longer, then stood, brushing his hand along the side of the bed. "Goodbye, Dad." He turned and walked slowly toward the door, his shoulders heavy with things he never got to say, and just as he stepped into the hallway, behind him, inside the quiet room, Henry Raymond's eyes opened. They blinked slowly at the ceiling, his lips moving, dry and fragile. "Logan." But the hallway was already empty, and the son he had waited so long to call out to was gone. The next morning, everything changed. The night nurse was the first to notice. When she entered room 208 to check vitals, she nearly dropped her clipboard. Henry Raymond's eyes were open, wide, alert, following her every movement. She called for the attending physician, who rushed in with a team. Blood pressure, pupil response, motor function, everything showed signs of return. Not full consciousness, not yet, but awareness. A flicker of light in what had been a locked room, and then, clear as day, he whispered one word, "Logan." Judy was across the building when she heard. She sprinted through the halls, still in her scrubs, tears already welling before she reached the room. She burst in just in time to see Henry's eyes shift toward her. They softened. She dropped to her knees beside the bed, clutching his hand. "You're back," she breathed, voice shaking. "You're really back." He didn't speak, but the faintest smile pulled at the corner of his lips, a response, a miracle. She cried then, quietly, fully, her hand pressed to her mouth to keep from sobbing aloud. Later that morning, she stepped into the hallway, took a breath, and called Logan. He answered on the second ring. "Judy?" Her voice was trembling. "Logan, your father, he said your name." There was silence on the line. "I don't understand," he finally whispered. "He's awake," she said, barely believing it herself. "He's here. He asked for you." Logan didn't wait for more. By nightfall, he was back. He canceled the meetings, left the contract unsigned, told the board he had a family emergency, and walked away from a multi-million-dollar deal without blinking. Judy met him in the lobby. He looked different, his face drawn from the overnight flight, eyes clouded with hope and fear. She stepped forward, unsure what to say. But he pulled her into a hug before she could speak, holding her like someone anchoring himself to the only truth that mattered. "Where is he?" he asked. She led him to room 208. Henry was sitting slightly upright, propped by pillows. His head turned slowly when Logan stepped in. Their eyes met. Logan froze. Neither spoke for a moment. There were no rehearsed speeches, no grand gestures, just a long, trembling pause, and then Henry lifted a shaking hand. Logan crossed the room in 3 strides and took it. He sat at the edge of the bed, gripping his father's fingers like a lifeline. "I'm here, Dad," he whispered. "I'm here." Henry blinked slowly. His voice was barely more than breath. "You sang?" Logan nodded, his eyes glistening. "I did. She taught me." His father's gaze drifted to Judy, who stood in the corner, silent and tearful. "Thank you," Henry rasped. Judy smiled through her tears. Later, after the doctors cleared the room, Logan found Judy sitting in the garden courtyard behind the building, her hands folded in her lap. He sat beside her, reached for her fingers, and held them tightly. "You didn't just bring him back," he said softly. "You brought me back, too." She turned to him, eyes shining in the low garden light. "You brought my father home, and you brought my heart home with him." Judy leaned her head on his shoulder, and in the stillness of that moment, surrounded by blooming flowers and the quiet hum of life beginning again, they simply sat, Two hearts, once scattered, now returned. 1 year later, music returned to the halls of the care facility, not from a radio or a speaker system, but from the heart of room 208. Henry Raymond, once thought lost to silence, now sat in the courtyard on a crisp spring morning, a violin balanced gently beneath his chin. His fingers trembled, not from fear or weakness, but from the overwhelming emotion of holding his instrument again. Judy sat beside him, a music stand in front of her, sheet music fluttering in the breeze. Logan stood nearby, tuning an old acoustic guitar with quiet concentration. The past year had changed all three of them. Henry's recovery had been slow but steady. Physical therapy, daily practice, and the quiet miracle of human connection had brought him back. Enough to play again, enough to smile, enough to say "I love you" to the son he once pushed away. Logan had stepped back from his overseas role, choosing instead to work remotely, consulting on projects that allowed him to remain close. He still wore suits, still answered calls, but his days no longer belonged to boardrooms. They belonged to his father, to Judy, to something real. And Judy? Judy had started singing again, not in smoky lounges or echoey bars, but in rooms like this one, for people who needed music not as background noise, but as balm. She began teaching music therapy part-time, humming lullabies to dementia patients and rediscovering the soul she once feared she had lost. Together, the three of them planned a small concert, a thank you to the facility, to the nurses and residents who had watched this unlikely family form. The common room was decorated with paper flowers, hand-drawn signs, and a banner that read, "An afternoon of music and miracles." Residents wheeled in, staff took their places, and a soft hush fell over the room as Henry stepped onto the makeshift stage, his violin cradled carefully in his hands. Logan followed with his guitar. Judy stood at the mic, wearing a simple white dress, her hair down in loose curls. They opened with "Smile," the song that had started everything. Henry's bow moved gracefully, slower than in his prime, but rich with emotion. Judy's voice soared, stronger now, seasoned by time and healing. Logan's strumming kept them grounded, steady, a quiet heartbeat beneath the melody. When they finished, the room erupted into applause. Some residents clapped slowly, others wiped their eyes. A few whispered, "That was beautiful," again and again. But the performance was not over. Judy took a small bow, then turned to step away from the mic. Logan stopped her gently. "Stay," he whispered. He set down his guitar and pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small velvet box. The crowd quieted, breaths held. Judy froze, eyes wide. He dropped to one knee. "I wasn't sure what love was," he said, voice trembling slightly but steady. "Not until I heard it. In your voice. In the way you sang for my father. In the way you brought him back to life." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring set with a single sapphire. "You don't wear armor," he continued. "You wear light. And somehow, you lit up the darkest corners of my life." Tears spilled down Judy's cheeks as she raised her hand to her mouth. "I don't need a stage or a spotlight or a perfect plan. I just need you." He looked up, eyes filled with something sacred. "Will you marry me?" The room burst into soft gasps and quiet cheers. Judy laughed through her tears, nodding. "Yes, of course, yes." Logan slid the ring onto her finger, stood, and pulled her into a gentle embrace. From his chair nearby, Henry pushed himself up, not easily, but with determination. A nurse stood to help him, but he waved her off. Step by step, he crossed the room to them. He reached out, took Judy's hand in one of his, Logan's in the other, and then, quietly, he began to cry. The applause that followed was thunderous, not because of the performance or even the proposal, but because every soul in that room understood what had just happened. Healing, love, home. Logan turned back to the mic, cleared his throat, and said, "If you'll indulge me for one more minute." The room fell silent again. "She didn't know," he began, "that when she sang for my father, She wasn't just singing for him. She was writing a new song, one for me, one I didn't even know I needed. He glanced at Judy, his voice thick with emotion. She gave me back my father, and in doing that, she gave me back myself. He paused, then smiled. I used to think I wasn't meant for love, that home was a thing you earned or bought or faked, but now I know. It's something you find. He reached for Judy again, and I found mine, in her. The room stood to its feet. In the crowd, a resident wiped her eyes and whispered, "That's the kind of love you don't get in the movies." But maybe, just maybe, it was the kind you got in real life, and for Judy, Logan, and Henry Raymond, it was only the beginning of the greatest song they would ever write, together. If this story touched your heart, we hope you'll carry its melody with you, just like Logan carried Judy's voice into the quiet corners of his life. At Soul Stirring Stories, we believe in the quiet power of love, healing, and second chances. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest acts, a song, a touch, a whispered name, can change everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that could stir your soul and warm your heart. Thank you for being here, and remember, home isn't a place, it's someone who sings your name back to you when you've forgotten the words.